I spent 50 years building my last city in Cities Skylines 1. Even though I played the game for a good amount of hours, with my first city started all the way back in 2015, I would still consider myself a relative beginner at the game. With only a little over 100 hours spent on it, I am nowhere near what other people have spent playing Cities Skylines. But to give this game a proper send-off and refine my skills in the city building genre as we wait for the anticipated Cities Skylines 2, I thought it would be only fitting to spend the right amount of time creating my last city of Cities Skylines 1. At least for a while. Now, I do have some goals for myself for this city, and the first one is I can only spend 50 years building it. We're starting in August of 2023. That means once we hit August in 2073, I have to stop. There's no more building. The city is as it is. In that time, I want to hit at least 100,000 residents. I want to build multiple districts and keep a fairly good traffic flow at around 70%. This last one might be a little bit tricky for me because I suck at managing traffic. I can't seem to get better. It doesn't matter how much I try. But at last I wanted to set myself a little challenge to send this game off in the right way. So sit back, grab some popcorn and relax, because this is going to be a long one. Year 1 started off rather slow, checking out the region that we would call home for the next 50 in-game years. We began with the very basics, after placing the mandatory 1-unit road to unlock all the other road types. A beginning layout that can hold both residential, commercial, and industrial zones began to take shape. The city also required some power and water to function, and oh yeah, I better not forget about the sewage. Emptying it out in the ocean though might not be the best solution, but it's kind of what we got for now. Within the first couple of months, we hit the first milestone of a little hamlet, unlocking things like the landfill, healthcare and schools. Things we'll use later on once we have a better cash flow. During the first year, we saw the beginning of the city taking shape with the extension of the original city and the industrial zones. Finishing off the year, we celebrated hitting Boomtown with 2,200 residents. That got commemorated with the city's very first park. Not a big one though, but a small city equals a small park. And we decorated it just a little bit. Starting year 2, we unlocked the very first plot next to our existing one, making the first steps towards the expansion that is to come for the city. I also had my first encounter building intersections, something that I really haven't done much of, so I just opted for whatever the game had to offer, and jazzed it up a little with a roundabout. I also had a little run-in with a mod problem. Yeah, I'm using mods for this one. Nothing too wild, just some quality of life changes. I noticed that trees were not removed as I placed the roads, leading to some very impractical roads, well, at least for the residents. Setting collisions off in anarchy. Fixed it. Problem solved. Spending almost 2 to 3 months building new roads in this city, I totally forgot that the city needed my presence. We had to fix the water and sewage situation, the electricity as well, and now that we're at it, people were slowly dying with no cemetery in place anywhere. I spent a great deal of money on roads this year, so not much was left for the residents. Business owners slowly started to abandon their business because of no educated workers. We had some elementary schools around, but really no high school, a problem that we had to take care of in the coming years. We ended this year by editing Boom Park, making it a little bit more efficient, and to attract some more residents, as parks can be a relatively good income source. Year 3 marked the first high school of the city, hopefully fixing some of the business abandoning problems we had earlier. I also expanded the city some more, and we even hit the milestone of a big town. Not much else of interest happened during this year, though we started to accumulate some garbage, which eventually would create a problem, so maybe we would have to address that as well. The start of a city in Cities Skylines can be a little slow at times, but I like to not rush into things as I easily lose sight of what I'm actually doing. Slow and steady always wins the race, right? Year 4 I started the expansion to what I originally envisioned as the main part of the city, though I have to admit that it probably doesn't hold up all the way through, and I guess once we get to about year 30, you'll probably see why. In the process, I found out that even with a mod, keeping roundabouts completely round was really harder than you would think. I guess at this point I should really start to name the districts, but back in the original town, garbage is now taken care of, and Boom Park is frequently used by a lot of people, it would seem, both for passing through but also for enjoyment. At least we're making some positive money from the park, and that's really what I was going for. To end off the year, I added bicycle lanes to many of the roads, really in an effort to try and reduce the traffic before it got bad, but also biking is healthy. In year 5, as the city continued to grow, I started to see the pollution I caused to the waters around the town. Pumping all that poop into the ocean might not be a suitable solution after all. Who would have guessed? But it had to wait for now, because I had a plan for what this year had to bring. With some money saved up, I started building what would become the masterpiece of a downtown. We're talking skyscrapers, big roads, many people, and headaches. Of course, right now it's nothing really special, but give it time, it will get there. I got the brilliant idea to lay out the entire city road system before I started zoning in, and it did create some problems that you will see later on, because I did not really account for where I wanted to put all the zones, and that gave me a few headaches along the way once we get further on into the years. But in the process of creating the layout, I created a roundabout that I would deem more of an alien than an actual roundabout. But after 1 year of construction, the new part of town is ready, and quite large at that. More roads and parks will be added later on, but for now, this will definitely do. In year 6, people began moving into the new part of town, and apartment blocks quickly rose from the ground up. With the high amount of people coming into the city, I would have to find a solution for city services. Since it covers such a big area, I'm thinking the bigger options of the police headquarters, the large fire station, and the hospital is probably the way to go. Year 6 is also the year that we became a big city, reaching 13,000 residents. That also means that now we can burn dead people instead of just burying them. I guess that's also a milestone, sort of. The start of year 7 was spent zoning a large part of the city, and it was also during this process that residents really began to rise quickly. During year 7, we also hit the milestone for Grand City, reaching 16,000 residents. Year 7 was really used to observe the city, looking for flaws here and there that I initially might have missed by building all the roads, zoning, and whatnot. This was largely due to a roundabout being set up incorrectly, so a quick fix there and that solved kind of the problem. Also, with an upgraded avenue to 6 lanes did the trick. So far I haven't touched much of the road setup of the entire city, and I have to be honest, building roads is not my strong suit in this game. So I'm fairly surprised to see that it's actually going fairly good. Traffic is about 74%, so we are above the 70% target or goal I have for this city. Though that being said, I think there is like 43 years left of this city, so there is definitely still the potential of this going completely wrong. Another problem that I really want to fix in the city, and it's more of just an eyesore, it's the sewage. I'm still not happy with how bad the water pollution is in the area, and I think in an effort to fix this, I'll try to go for the water treatment plants in the future, and then slowly phase out the drain pipes altogether. The last thing I did this year was making ready for the next areas and for the coming expansions that I wanted to do to the city. I wanted to create a forestry industry district, and also a new part of the city as well. But when I tried terraforming the area, apparently I filled up my soil storage. Yeah, I have to be honest, I never knew that was a thing. I haven't done much with the terraforming either. Now I were at the point where I had to dump it elsewhere to continue terraforming. I know I can just dump it and kind of pay money to get rid of it, but it was really expensive and I really wanted to spend the money elsewhere, not by dumping soil somewhere. There is still a long way to go for this city. We have many years left, but I feel it moving forward, and we're ranking in the money right now. It might actually be time to give something back to the citizens. Year 8 was spent only focusing on the forestry industry, getting it up and running and leveling it up. I haven't tried much of the industrial districts before, so definitely a new one for me. Hence why I spent so much time on it. Reaching level 2, we now have the ability to make factories, storage, and worker barracks. Interesting. The citizens of the city also cried out for a new prison, and they have been good lately, so I decided to make their wish come true. I spent the majority of year 9 beautifying the city, and by beautifying I mean adding parks to the downtown area. The biggest problem this year was a major power shortage of services not receiving enough resources to keep going. Apparently oil could not be transferred to the power plant, and that gave the entire city a blackout. Eventually though, they did arrive, sparking power back into the city, so now people could again watch Netflix. It's great. I also spent some time laying the new foundation to another district that I wanted to make in the city, and it required a bit of terraforming as it was kind of on a hill, which also eventually later on gave name to the district itself. I'm not a big fan of the name that I chose for this district, but I kind of just kept going with it for some reason, so yeah, you'll see the name later on. I got more creative with the names as we move on, so bear with me for this one. Year 10, a milestone to get this far, I would say. 10 years this city have been under construction, and at this point almost 25,000 citizens have moved to the city. That is actually not too bad if I have to say that myself. Since we are at year 10, we have to do at least something. So for this milestone, I'm creating the next district of this city. With the districts, we can give benefits to the citizens of the city, and though I don't really know too much about it and how it actually affects the city as a whole, I just decided to give everybody a free Wi-Fi because why not? I wanted to do something to memorize this 10-year mark, and I thought a cool thing to build would be an amusement park. And like that, Millennium Park was born. I'm gonna be honest, for an amusement park, it looks pretty lame. Hopefully as the years go on and the city grows bigger, it will become the park that the people deserves. It won't. Being at the end of year 10, I can feel the severity of the traffic and commute time in the city, and I think it might be time that we in the coming years focus a bit more on the mass transit of the city. But I wanted to take the time and admire what the city has become so far. Though I still have a young city and we have a long way to go, I'm quite impressed with how far we've gotten. Considering my skills in the game, at least. Year 11, we hit the milestone of Capital City, reaching 26,000 citizens. A big achievement and a big step towards our end goal of 100,000 residents. Year 11 marked the year of the bus. With the help of a nifty workshop asset, I began making the bus lines in the city with small terminals which I could cart people to then send them off to other parts of the city. Kind of like a little hub, if you would. I have to be honest with you right now that it didn't function as well as I initially hoped, so bear with me for this one. Don't scream at me in the comments. Though the placements did take a little while to get right. It took a couple of tries. The bosses acted, well, not that natural. I don't really know. I usually don't take the bus that often, so I don't know if the movement is normal, if they just kind of drive wherever they please to. It did present a little problem with the initial traffic, as the buses acted like whatever, and people weren't really using it as much as I would have hoped for, but maybe over time it would get better. Lastly, following the mass transit trends I were in, I opted to place some metro stations around the city that would eventually be active, but a power problem kind of presented itself again that I had to address. Some of the power plants were still not getting fuel for some reason. Year 12, traffic really started to become a problem again, and dead people were flooding the streets downtown at this point. Hopefully the metro stations can help with the situation, or maybe I should just upgrade the roads? Not much really happened this year. I spent a good amount of time correcting some of the traffic problems and upgrading the parks. Though a big problem did present itself as we got towards the end of the year, the water supply was starting to run dry. It was a costly but easy fix. We had to unlock a new area to put the pumps there, since there was so much pollution around the main city that I had to pull it further away. It's not really a big problem though, because the area that I unlocked was a part of the initial plan I had for the next expansion to the city, so. Year 13, I started off by fixing the rest of the water problems in the area. I also expanded on the new industry area. Other than that, I started terraforming a new area around High District. You know, the district that I'm really not too keen on the name for. Doing that, I accidentally flooded the entire area, washing away the buses and the cars, but we're all good. After all, it's just water, right? Landscaping is not something that I have done all that much of in the game, and I have to be honest that this didn't turn out great initially. But the whole point of this city is to learn and to refine my skills in the game, making myself ready for Cities Skylines 2. I made it a district and gave it a suitable name, Utopia, short for used to be water, because that felt great in my head. The district right now is very small, but in the future of the city we'll see this area expanded upon, and it will actually be a more integrated part of the entire city, also presenting me with a lot of problems later on down the road. I got to work on the parks in the High District area, laying out the foundation, but after a while, out of nowhere, it hit me that I forgot to put in the water pipes in the new industry area. It's fair to say that people didn't enjoy that. I quickly fixed it and got back to the park. I named the park High Garden, and I have a very specific plan I want to try out for this park. But that will have to be for another year. We ended up the year taking a look at the city itself, as it is about to hit 36,000 citizens and becoming a colossal city. Year 14, stupid as I was, I forgot to turn on my recording and I just happily built away. Not much happened though, mostly some terraforming, but here is a short recap of what I did during this year. I expanded on Utopia and made it ready for the expansion that I have in mind. I also made ready for some more industry, as that is what people wanted apparently. And yeah, that is pretty much it. So you might think, why are you almost through an entire year cycle? Well, more flooding in Utopia. That you just have to take my word for, because I have no video proof of that. I constructed the next part of Utopia that would eventually become a cargo harbor for transporting goods. I just had to figure out how to get the highway all the way there, and I really had some problems with the mountain that was kind of in the way. The beginning of year 15 was mainly park management. I had some parks throughout the city that were really not up to par. I also added a brand new park, Maxley Garden, that I named after the close by avenue because I did not really have a better name for it. I had wondered for a while why my industry buildings didn't really seem to upgrade all that much. Turns out I forgot about a fire service in the area, and after putting that, we heard the most satisfying sound in Cities Skylines 1. The year ended badly with a huge traffic jam downtown. I guess I have to figure out a new entrance to the city down there. The current one is not working, and it's not that pretty looking either. The downtown traffic jam created a ripple effect throughout the entire city, something that I would have to fix, and I would have to do it fast. But am I even able to? Year 16, I did almost everything in my power to get the traffic flow to go up. I changed the entrance to the downtown, and I even added a new one. Once I had done what I thought would be enough, I let the game run its course for a while. Sometimes the game needs to run for a couple of months for the traffic to sort out. So I decided to let the game stay while I was writing the script that I'm looking at right now. Time flew by and it's going up a little bit. 62%. Definitely getting better. I went throughout the city trying some different tips and pointers I've gathered throughout the years. At the end of the year, traffic was actually a little bit better, reaching all the way up to 67%, at which it was kind of staying at for most part throughout the cities. Sometime during the lifespan of the city, you'll see it drop dramatically, and there's a very specific reason that I'll tell you in the later coming years. At the start of year 17, we were actually back over 70% traffic, at least for the time being. Though it wouldn't surprise me if we had to undergo more problems like we just encountered. But for now, it was time to focus on something else. That is 2 years of just fixing roads and traffic. One thing that I have not looked at for ages is the forestry industry. And things here were starting to get a little bit out of control. Buildings and factories were starting to run out of materials. So a welcome expansion, and now the place is pretty much back up and running. I began developing more on the Utopia district, turning it into a waterside residential area just as I originally intended it. Now I just had to get it to look just right, but that is still some years away. Year 18, the traffic problems were back again, really bad, so I spent all of year 18 and 19 just trying to fix the traffic and figure out the situation. All I really did was trying to figure out the traffic situation to the point where I went through every roundabout with TMPE, trying to tell people to stay in the lanes and choose the lanes going in, and it did not work. Maybe because I don't really know how to use the mod, but I gave it a shot. What else could I do? But people were abandoning ship. With the right reasons, of course. I mean, who wants to live in a city flowing with dead people? Well, I guess Rick Grimes didn't really get to choose, unless, of course, it was all just a dream. But the people of Hundredopolis, they had a choice, and they chose to leave. Ultimately, I went with the tough decision of admitting my failure and deleting every single bus road in the city, starting over completely, because they did not help the situation in the slightest. I don't know if it helps. We'll see that during the next coming years, because I'm redoing the entire transit system of the city. Initially, I wanted to have something special planned for year 20, but that is the thing with this game. You mess up in some area and boom, here's years of work trying to solve that problem. So the only special thing for this year is that this is going to be the year of public transport. That means for the entire year 20, I'll be trying to optimize the transport hierarchy in the city because it failed to begin with. I took the bus hubs and moved them to 3 parts of the city to a more centralized location in the hopes of making bus lines a local solution not an intercity solution. I divided each district, High District, Origin Square, and Origin Downtown, into 4 parts and made 4 local bus lines to cover those areas. And oh yeah, I totally forgot, the thing that I did with the roundabout, it made the travel time so much worse because now they had to go in circles all the time because they could not physically pick a lane. Eventually I'll get it all reverted throughout the town, but for now I have to pick it up as we go. While I was not sure why the bus lines that I put in would not work, I realized that in the process of moving all the bus hubs, I disconnected the bus depot from the power. Yeah, that was not smart. At the end of year 20, traffic is still really bad, but I'm hoping in the coming years, as time moves on, it will be better. With the redone bus lines, people may be more inclined to use that for local solutions and then use the metro station for an intercity solution. The metro station is what I'm going to overhaul next, so hopefully that will help with people traveling from High District to Origin Downtown, let's say. I can already tell now that I'm making a lot of mistakes in this city, but that's the whole point with making this city. I want to make the mistakes and try to solve them as we go. Year 21 was spent just browsing the city, looking at how it all ran, and to say the least, not well. At this point, it honestly seemed like I was fixing one problem with the traffic and a new one just arose, and frankly, I got a little bit tired of it. Therefore, I decided to look elsewhere for a bit and let the big city life run its course, thereby adding a new addition to the city. Welcome to our water source. No, really, this will be the new area of the city, Mountain Range Bay. I know it's not really a bay, but I just kind of like the name. A smaller, more civilized society for the simpler people, and we even have a farmland. First order of business is to get the highway redirected to make room for the city itself, and of course we also need an entrance point. But it did not last long, because as of year 22, I had to go back and fix the traffic even more, because at this point, the city was almost killed. So year 22 and 23 was again back to the traffic simulator and try and see if I could get it to run better. I was so focused on the traffic and transport that years melded together, and I just honestly forgot to keep track. So for the video, I'm just adding these 2 years together because I really don't know when what happened. During the years, I did manage to fix the metro lines just a little bit. So now instead of going in circles like they did before in between the districts, now I put a centralized hub that did actually cost a fair amount of money. But now the metro lines go in straight lines back and forth and is all connected to that hub, in the hopes of making traveling between districts a little bit more lucrative and time saving as well. Now, I do have a confession to make, and to say the least, I'm a little bit embarrassed. I use a mod, TMPE, that gives you a greater control over the traffic. The mod has an option to create less or more traffic jams. Essentially, it becomes traffic on hard mode if you turn it on. And I did not know that the feature was on as default, but apparently it was. And that's why the traffic was so insane. And of course, partly my bad building of the road systems. But I realized it by accidentally clicking the button in TMPE. And over time, it just started to sort out. And now I'm just left here feeling a little bit stupid because I essentially wouldn't have played with that to begin with, but now I have for over 20 years. And I apologize if people are against turning it off, but at this point I'm not interested in playing a traffic simulator. I'm interested in playing a city builder. With that being said, our traffic problems are not over. Some parts of the city is still with heavier traffic, but I'm still trying to solve it, and traffic is now at around 70% again, so we're getting back to there. While I was left feeling a little bit stupid about my traffic problems, I went ahead and worked a bit more on Mountain Range Bay. We got some farms into the area and some housing for the people to live in as well. shops to buy things, and the basic services like a clinic, a police station, a fire station, and a school. Next for this area is going to be a local bus route. With the small size of this little city or district, whatever you want to call it, I'm not going to connect it to the metro system, at least not yet. Year 24, I was still a little bit burned out from the big city life and all the traffic fixing I've been doing for 20 years because of my own stupidity, by the way. So I decided to go back to the outskirts and work a bit more on evolving mountain range. I expanded the farming area to both crops and animals. Silos and worker capacity was in as well, and I was starting to level it up a little bit. This is the first time I'm ever playing with the farming industry as well, so honestly, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just hoping that what I do is somewhat right. I also went ahead and changed all the sewage pipes to eco-treatment plants. No more mass pollution of the water, because frankly, I was getting sick and tired of looking at that brown, dirty, disgusting water. But I still had to live with it for a little while longer, because just getting rid of it like that is not a possibility. The last thing I created this year was the local bus lines for Mountain Range. They weren't hugely popular, but some people did use them, and I call that a win, at least. Year 25, I had a plan. We did not get to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the city, mainly because of the traffic chaos and the mass abandonment of the city a couple of years ago. So I decided for year 25, we're doing something special, and that will eventually lead on to greater things coming year 26. I wanted the next expansion of the city to commemorate the half-year mark or the 25th anniversary of the city. So I started by cutting out the hill beneath the mountain near the coast around Utopia, just above High District or below High District, depending on how you're looking at it. My plan was to expand here, and my god was it expensive to terraform that. I don't think I'm lying if I'm saying that I spent close to $1 million that year just terraforming. Oh well, I'm hoping it's worth it in the end, but I think it might just be. I named the new district Silverfoot Mountain. Silver referring to the 25th marriage anniversary, in this case the city anniversary. If you don't know the term, in Denmark, when people have been married for 25 years, they celebrate their silver anniversary. During the year, we also hit 50,000 citizens, halfway to the 100,000 target. And even at the halfway mark for the city. That is just beautiful. With that, we also get a new area to unlock, and really what that means is that I can begin the next part of my plan, and that entails a new DLC that I bought for the game, but that will be for year 26. Year 26, I decided to treat myself to a new DLC, the Hotels and Retreats DLC. Actually, the latest one released, and with that, I was planning to build the next area of the city, being a vacation part of the town, and I have a very cool spot for it to be in. Before I could start my hotel business in the city, I battled with getting the harbor to work so the tourists could actually arrive to the city. By now they could only use the highway, and that would create a lot of traffic coming into the city, and I thought that using a harbor would be better for the traffic flow. But as I couldn't get it to work, I realized that instead of putting down a harbor, I put down a ferry depot. Redo. I put in the harbor and now everything should work, until I realized that I had absolutely no clue what to do, so I just plopped down the hotels and started building roads to this small island thing that we had that I wanted to create into a vacation area. I'm just now realizing that I probably didn't plan this out too well. I have a cool idea in my head, and now that I'm recording the audio, I'm actually realizing how little I planned for this, but I promise it will be better as we go on throughout the years. But honestly, I had no idea how the hotels worked. I'm just placing a hotel in a roundabout. I mean, what was I even thinking? I think at this point it's very apparent that I make a lot of mistakes, and I think it's largely due to me being frustrated. There's just the whole traffic situation that's been going on for years, and even though I unclicked the hard mode button, the traffic was still not good. So when I couldn't get the hotels to work, it got me even more frustrated, and I just decided to go back and try and fix some more problems in the city. But it was just the same old. I fixed one problem someplace, and a new one just arose in a completely different place. Being frustrated as I was, I decided to do the metro lines instead for Silverfoot Mountain, and I had to connect up the harbor as well in the hopes of minimizing the insane traffic flow that was coming in through that harbor. That ultimately led to a completely new metro line going from the harbor to the downtown area through the metro hub, as I realized that one car could go from the harbor and then all the way to the downtown. And I thought, if I had the metro line going from the harbor to downtown, that would be at least that one car trip saved. And where I am right now, one car trip saved, that's a big win. Year 27 is all about the hotels. I finally started creating the waterfront that I wanted for Silver Bay, even though I'm 2 years late on when I actually wanted to do this. I added a fort that in my opinion looks really cool. I'm imagining an old pirate fort, or maybe a British one, who knows. Along with that, I added a waterfront park, or a beach park, of which I'm charging the maximum amount because it's a holiday area. If there's one thing tourists don't mind using, it's money. At the other end of the park, I added a boat museum, really to keep in the theme of this area having some history to it. And I finally got my hotels to actually generate a profit. Turns out I actually needed to put the hotels near the stuff that the tourist wanted. I mean, who would have guessed? Maybe it was kind of obvious, but then again, I should have looked into it before I started. Anywho, that was pretty much all of year 27. It's still not finished, but so far I really like how it looks. Year 28, I went back to Silverfoot Mountain, and it seemed really bare-boned. There's really nothing out of the ordinary, and we have so many unfilled spaces. I tried to start a little trend with High District of creating a park in the empty spots between the buildings, and I decided to continue that here. The main reason for that is I love to use the parks. They can give a generous amount of income and they make the land value shoot up. That, and it is almost the only decorative DLC that I own. I got to work creating all of the parks, and it really took longer than I actually anticipated. The main difference from the park you see in High District and the ones you see here in Silverfoot Mountain is that the ones in High District are throughout all of the empty spaces between the buildings. But for Silverfoot Mountain, I didn't just want to do the same. So instead I opted for creating almost, 15 different parks? I know it's maybe a bit overkill, but I needed something to do with the area, and it looked so empty, and I thought, we're doing it. During the process, we even hit the last milestone of the game, Megatropolis. At 65,000 citizens, we now only have 35 to go, and we now have the ability to unlock the entire map if we wish to. But first, let's get these parks done in a timely manner. Admittedly, they don't look all that different to one another, but there's really only so much we can do with the few buildings we have for the park areas. Naturally, I could go over all the parks, place the props all over, but I spent almost a year just doing this. Imagine how much time it would take for me to do the rest if I had to place the props all over. Though they do look very similar to each other, there are some that stands out in various ways. The one we have right here, you can enjoy a really nice cup of coffee right next to a highway roundabout. This one is the biggest of them all, with multiple entrance points and lots of stuff for people to do. And last but not least, there is this one which is completely enclosed by buildings, which I actually think looks really, really cool. In year 29, nothing really of greater detail happened. I spent so much time in the early years just building on the city that year 29 was just spent tweaking little things around the town. I was looking up on some of the bus lines I have throughout the city. With all the changes that I made, some of them are bound to mess up just a little bit, and I were correct. Some of them would take very special ways around town and do multiple laps in the same area. It's really not that efficient when it comes to traveling from one spot to another. I also went ahead and put some more schools in Silverfoot Mountain. We were missing some high schools and a university as well, because I wanted people to be highly educated in that area. There are many businesses, many office buildings, so it only made sense to get some more education into that area. And lastly, I made ready for the plans that I have for the coming year 30. This time I want to make sure that we can actually celebrate a milestone, and reaching year 30, we only have 20 years left to build the rest of the city. I had some ideas for what I wanted to make for year 30, and with almost the same amount of years on the back at this point in the city, I wanted to try and see if I could make a new city district or a completely new part of the city almost like as a new city itself that would have some of everything to hopefully attract as many people as possible to reach the next milestone of 100,000 citizens. But first I needed to make some landscape preparations. I needed to flatten out the area a bit more to make room for the city to come. It ended up taking quite the amount of time actually. The area was also big, but it also needed to be because I wanted this to be a city for itself almost. It is connected to Origin downtown and it will be connected to the highway at 2 other spots for people to come in, but I needed it to be big for what I had planned for this area. The highway did take some time to get just right, as I wanted to try a trick that I remember from back in the day when I played the most and what I usually did when making highways. I made the highway go through the city, sort of. Of course I needed to upgrade with sound barriers, but that would be when it was all ready. Right now I'm just doing the layout of the city and then we'll tweak all the things as we go on. Nearing the end of year 30, it did become apparent to me that finishing this part of the city would take at least another couple of years. Designing the road layouts are quite a challenge, as I honestly don't even know if they are good or not. As I said in the beginning of the video, even though I played the game for a fair amount of hours, I still consider myself a beginner. But I'm a big fan of learning by doing, and that is the whole idea with this city and this video. It is to learn a bit more about Cities Skylines and how it all functions. With the layout being finished, I really just needed to fill out some of the gaps with smaller roads, and I had to think of something to do with the empty gaps between the buildings. I just didn't want it to be parks this time around. I've done parks 2 times now. I needed to find something else to do. In year 31, I spent the first part of the year getting the new district ready. There was still some stuff missing and I filled in some of the gaps, connected the roads up, and made space for where I wanted a transport hub to be, including both a metro hub and a local bus station. Before I began zoning the city, I also wanted all of these services to be in their spot. I needed this part of town to run as efficient as possible, though you will see me encounter some problems. I think it's apparent that I will encounter my fair share of problems, but it's fine. Not that I'm too discouraged though, but for this district I thought I would give it its own water source as well as its own sewage management, and that is really to keep it apart from the other city. I decided to go with a power source for this part of town as well, one that I have actually not tried before. All of the other parts have oil, and my main problem with the oil is getting the oil delivered to the oil power plants. So for this one I tried a solar updraft tower, and the advantage with the solar updraft tower is that nothing needs to get delivered there. I connected up all the metro stations I placed throughout the city, and I even pulled a line from the main hub in Origin to this new district. Hopefully that will encourage some intercity traveling for both citizens and tourists. The only thing missing now is the bus lines throughout the new district, which I quickly filled in as I kind of had an idea of how I wanted it to be. I placed down some more services like a hospital, fire station and police station in different sizes to cover the whole city district, as well as enough crematoriums in the hopes that dead people would actually be picked up this time around, because that is definitely one of the main issues in all the other districts. I called that good enough for now, as all there was left to do was to build up the area with what I actually wanted to be there. But that will be the start of year 32, as we're almost at the end of year 31, and I needed some time to take a look at the rest of the city, especially because there's one thing from another district that I want to try and implement in the new part over here. I went over to the hotels at Silver Bay to look at how they were doing, and they actually made a decent profit at this point. I went here because I'm hoping to implement some hotels in the new part of town, and I needed to see what kind of worked and what didn't. Year 32, I opted for a different approach to the new part of the city. Instead of it being one district, I split it into 6 different districts. Naming the districts turned out to be the biggest hurdle here, so instead I just left them as they were for now and started zoning them. I started with the now named district of Belmont, as I wanted this to be the prime residential district for this part of the city. Everything needed power though, and I knew it was going to take some time for it to spread correctly, and I didn't want power lines throughout the entire thing that I would eventually delete anyway. So I just opted for crossing my fingers that it wouldn't kill this part before it even got started. As people slowly started to move into the new part, I moved over to the industrial district and started a bit there to try and generate some jobs that would eventually generate some demand. That would also help the electricity to spread better throughout the city, as the solar updraft tower was in the industrial district. I spent some time looking at the city developing, and I quickly identified a spot that could present a problem in the future. This intersection right here seemed very busy, and it doesn't get better as the city grows. Maybe it's just the flow of people coming in or moving into this part, but I think it will present a problem as we go on. In the meantime, I moved over to another district, a district that I wanted to be the tourism part of this town, and that's why I went to Silver Bay in the end of the last year. That is because I want to implement all the things I did right in Silver Bay to this part right here. I named the city district Another Point, and it's really because it's another point than the point we already have. As Belmont was pretty much completely zoned in at this point, I moved on to the next district, being called Sterling. Also being zoned nicely, all we need here is some office buildings going all the way along the coast. The industry is also completely zoned at this point, so the new part is starting to look great. Year 33, I decided to spend a good amount of time developing Another Point to get that up and running as a tourism district. That resulted in me putting in various attractions for people like the clock tower, the official park, and a observation tower. And boy, did that help to attract people. I did put in a little bit of shopping as well, as in Silver Bay, people were attracted by commercial buildings. Another Point started to look really good at this point. We got in some more attractions, and we even unlocked new hotels because it was leveling up because of the high income from Another Point. Though the hotel we unlocked did not have a spot in Another Point, as it was really a business hotel, so I tried to put it down in Utopia, as there is a lot of business and commercial buildings around. It's not the prettiest, but it actually makes an okay profit. Building a city over 50 years is a big task, and therefore much of year 33 was spent patching up holes that I created here and there. As I'm going from one district to another, things are bound to go wrong in other districts, so every now and then I have to circle back and check all the things I have done before. At this point we are at 73,000 citizens, and we're getting closer and closer to the goal of 100,000 citizens. I think it's important at this point to clarify that this is not a speed run in any way, shape, or form. This is just me setting a time for how long I can spend a city and creating goals for myself to try and build my dream city in Cities Skylines as my last city in Cities Skylines. At least for Cities Skylines 1, that is. As we came closer to the end of the year, I fixed a small traffic jam in Another Point, trying a sneaky trick with a tunnel road beneath the roundabout that, even though it probably shouldn't work, it actually did, surprisingly. Also, I got a pretty cool idea for what I could do with the entire district, ranging all the way from Another Point to Belmont to Sterling and so on, but that would have to wait for year 35, because first, year 34 was reserved to taking care of the rest of the city. Some pretty boring stuff actually, so I won't show too much of it. Mostly traffic, as this game can be a real traffic simulator, at least when you're not that good at the game, just kinda like me. One thing I did end up doing was taking the metro system to Mountain Range side, and as I'm reading the script now, I can actually not remember why. But, however, the people of Mountain Range are now more connected to the rest of the city, as they have a metro connection that connects up to the hub in Origin downtown. Year 35, and the time for my grand master plan of the new city districts, that apparently in the metro system I ended up calling it Next. I think because I just referred to it as the next city part so much. However, now it's just called Next, and I'll refer to this entire area as Next from now on. It's been many years at this point, I can't remember everything that I wrote. But for the city part of Next, I wanted to create a zoo that spreads over many kilometers, or miles if you are American. And the whole idea with the zoo is that you can enter at one point in the city and walk from, let's say, Belmont and all the way down to another point if you wish, looking at different animals throughout the entire zoo. I started with the main gate, and then it was pretty much laying the pathway throughout the entire city of Next. It was going to take a long time, and it was most likely going to cost an immense amount of money, but I was counting on it going great and crossing my fingers that it would be profitable in the end. To keep in the theme that I apparently created for the name of this place, I decided to call the zoo Next Zoological Gardens, with the districts painted as I wanted, at least for now. All that was left was to put in the zoo itself. I started in Belmont as it has the most people, thereby hoping it would upgrade faster. I quickly realized the size of the project and it would take many years, but already now I think it's starting to look really cool. As we moved throughout the district, painting in the zoo, we leveled up to level 2, meaning even more animals. My initial idea was to have one animal in every section and fill out the spaces left with normal park things. Yeah, you can do that. But eventually I did run out of animals, so I had to put some twice. Not the biggest worry though. Making this zoo was an enormous project, and people of the entire city started to notice. Everybody and their mom heard about the zoo and wanted to see the majestic animals for themselves. In the interest of lowering traffic, I made a side entrance near the public transport hub, going all the way to the zoo. Not many people opted for that solution yet, but hopefully in the coming years they would actually do that instead of taking their car. Nearing the end of year 35, the zoo was starting to look really good. So far it's only spanning the district of Belmont, but in the next coming years we should have one of the biggest zoos, most likely, created in Cities Skylines. Someone might have made a bigger one, but not one that I actually know of. At the start of year 36, I decided to expand the zoo from Belmont down towards another point, with bridges going over the highway so people could walk there without being run down. I think that's a plus. Near the districts down there, I put the essentials to attract people, and we got some basic needs in as well. Naturally, we needed some animals, so we got the reptile amphibian house and the tarsier house as well. Moving down towards another point, I put a bit more, mainly because it's the high tourism area. They still got the basic needs, of course, and some park amenities as well, but they got better, I would say, animals like the elephants and flamingos. Down by the coast, we also got a sea life enclosure, and it wasn't until now that I actually realized the whales. Pretty cool. Going back, we have the Sterling district and the Florence district as well, and in between there I split the zoo into 4 parts containing different animals. In the area we got the lions, we got the rhinos, we got the moose and elks, and the giraffes, as well as some monkeys in the same square as the rhinos. As we moved on to the district of Florence, I have to admit I ran out of animals, so this area is not as special as all the others, as it contains many of the animals that are also seen in Belmont and in other parts. I had to put duplicates because there's only so many animals with this pack as well. But honestly, I really like this part of town. This district is kind of the pride and joy, and I actually really like how it turned out. Creating this zoo was not something I thought of when I started the city initially, and not even that, we made this zoo profitable. We're roughly spending 6,000 on it, and in return we're making a little over 12,000. So all in all, I would say a pretty big success, and hopefully people will not only use it as an amenity, but also to get around to minimize the traffic probably within the city. It is not without its flaws though. Since we put in the zoo, traffic have taken a turn for the worse, and it's really because people are going all the way from Origin downtown and Silverfoot Mountain to visit this zoo. After spending years building this zoological garden, I decided to spend year 37 actually fixing some of the problems I also had in Next. I had to place in the remaining buildings, as residential, commercial and office buildings were missing in different places. I also had to do something about the traffic, because my bulletproof plan of laying out the entire city road system and taking the highway beneath the roundabout have failed. And I have to be honest, it's largely thanks to the zoo, I would say. Before it was there, the traffic was fine, but with the large influx of people coming in to visit the zoo, the city was just not made for that many people. Traffic is always a hassle in this game, at least for me. I usually struggle to get it above 60%, so I would actually say being at 68% is not terrible, but I do want to see if I can push it to 70. One of the biggest problems I have beside the traffic is the death care. I have plenty of space in my crematoriums for people, but yet the hearses are not getting to the people because they do not stay within their own district. They can go all the way from Next to Origin downtown to pick up one guy and then drive further on to Silverfoot Mountain to pick up another guy. And that creates a problem of how to actually space in the crematoriums. Meanwhile, I have 4 crematoriums in Origin downtown going to all these other districts and don't pick up the people in their own districts. It's hard to explain, but it really irritates me that they do not stay within their own district, or at least close to. There is no reason for it to travel all the way from Next to Silverfoot Mountain just to pick up one guy when Silverfoot Mountain have their own crematorium with plenty of space and plenty of hearses going around. In an effort to prevent some of the problems with the death care, I tried to go for some more elder care, hoping that people would live longer and thereby not die as much. I even put it next to a crematorium, so in the case of something going to happen, maybe that would speed up the process just a little bit. And before I knew it, it was year 38. During this year, I discovered a industry spot that I totally forgot that I made. When was that? Did I even show that? Maybe like year 27? Well, at least I zoned in some of the area, but not all of it. So I thought we might as well just utilize it. So I zoned in the rest and then moved back to Next because I officially adopted the name Next for this entire city part, renaming all the districts to start with Next. So for example, Next Belmont, Next Sterling, and Next Florence. The only one keeping the name as it is another point. And that is because, well, it's just another point. No Next here. The industrial zone became Next Industrial, and just like that, after 8 years of its initial build, it finally got its official names. During this year, I also fiddled around with some policies, and I have to be honest, I was a little hesitant to choose some because I have no idea what they do or what will happen if something goes wrong. But I do know that this city is meant for me to learn, so I swallowed my insecurities and I picked a few policies here and there. Nothing major. I think the biggest thing I did was making the point high-tech housing to see what would change to it. Without realizing, I also picked the one called Big Business Benefactor in that one district, and I realized that our monthly income was shooting up to about 93,000. I thought this just couldn't be right. Instead of turning that one policy on in just the point district, I turned it on for the entire city. Not to complain though, because our profit just shifted completely. While having just finished Next, all of year 39 was spent making ready for the last 10 years of this city, and for that I had something planned, and that is a new area to the city that would hopefully put us past the 100,000 citizens goal that we have for this city. The new city district was going to be called Cross River, and the name comes from all of the rivers kind of crossing each other in this very spot. First order of business though was to create the highway connections, of which I wanted two, one in each end, one coming from mountain range and the other one coming from the regional highway that I have yet to unlock and modify a little bit too as well. I wanted this next area to be a combination of a bigger city and a smaller city, kind of intertwining with being an old farming location that eventually developed into being a bigger city. I started out by making the farm area and the little city next to the farming area. We got some fertile land here, so I thought I would give farming another run, as the one I did in Mountain Range really didn't take off that well. To go along with that farm, I made a little spot for a suburban area. I tried to keep this part disconnected to the bigger highway as much as possible, but eventually I had to kind of intertwine it within the whole city to get the Cross River to really function as I wanted it to. But my plan for the suburban area as is was to ban the heavy traffic and focus a lot more on the biking and maybe a single bus line for this part. Right next to the little suburban area there will be a bigger town with multiple connections to the highway. For this part I decided to create some more roundabouts with the highway, and I'm really testing a design to see if that will get the traffic to flow better. That I would later figure out that it wouldn't, but with some small tweaks as we go on it will eventually be better. If you can't tell at this point, I am a big fan of roundabouts. Well, at least in this game. I kinda don't like driving in roundabouts myself actually. For this city I wanted to go for a more traditional grid type just to see if it would actually work out. Though I tried my very best to not have too many conjunctions, and eventually as the years go on I will change the design a little bit to the city, because during the grids it didn't end up looking that nice. Lastly, I began terraforming up in the mountains, and for a very good reason that I am yet to reveal. If you think you know what I'm going to use this area for, comment it down below and I might just pin the correct answer if it comes up. Lastly, we were at year 40 and the preparation continues as we build up Cross River and Cross River Plains. I did the same thing here as I did for Next, where I gave the districts its own power and water source as well as waste management. It worked wonders in Next, so why not duplicate it to here? I began zoning the small town for the farming and named it Old Cross River. I thought it would fit nicely and could kind of differentiate from the bigger city of Cross River, and to kind of show that this was once a countryside town being built into something bigger over maybe what have once been some farming area as well. The farming area itself will be developed over time, as for now it's mostly just fields and silos. I went ahead and gave Old Cross River some basic services as well for the time being, as I wanted to shift my focus to actually build up Cross River, as these are the parts of the city that I'm counting on pushing me over my goal of reaching 100,000 citizens. Before I knew it, we were at the end of the year, and now officially we only had 10 years left as we entered year 41 very soon. And I have to be honest, early on I thought 100,000 people, that's easy. But now, as where we are, if Cross River fails, it would be kind of hard to hit that goal. But at the moment I was actually a little bit scared that I wasn't going to make it. For year 41 I left Cross River for a little while to generate some more demand so the city could be zoned completely. Meanwhile, I had a big project that I wanted to finish, and I only had 9 years left to do it. Maybe it is enough, but I have also never tried this part of the game before, and for it we had to move up into the mountains for a little while to create the Mountain River Reserve. In this area I wanted to create a nature-filled reserve for mainly tourism, with a few locals to keep the shops and the services going. It will be a place with a lot of nature parks and hotels for nature lovers to come from all over the city and even from outside as well. A great place to spend a weekend or a whole vacation, as long as hiking is the thing for you. It took the entire year just getting this area ready, from laying down the roads over the rivers, up through the mountains, and creating multiple entrance points to the area. I didn't want any big water pumps in the area, so I opted for a single water tower in the main local town that would hopefully be enough to supply the whole place with enough water. Also, it wouldn't be so nice having a giant industrial power plant, so I chose to put a couple of windmills in small spots around the mountain area, in the small places that we had with actual wind. And don't mind the power lines, hopefully I can get them reduced as we move on further with the area, but they do look a little bit out of place, but I tried to hide them as much as possible. Year 42 was a more eventful year than I had hoped for. I started out by realizing I totally forgot about sewage for the nature reserve. That was also a problem, so I had to connect it up to Cross River, even though I really didn't want to. I didn't want to use the same water supply as Cross River, but also I didn't want sewage flowing in the river in the nature reserve. It seems so out of place, so I opted for connecting it to Cross River and just not thinking about it too much. During the year I also put in the roads, or the pathways, for the nature reserve itself. It took a good quarter of the year to get all the pathways laid out. It covers a huge area, and maybe even too large, I don't know. I guess I again have to duplicate a lot of the amenities within the nature reserve pack. Who knows, maybe I'll throw in some other stuff from the zoo pack or the general parks. Nonetheless, it was time to create another little town across the river in the actual nature reserve. I also zoned in both of the towns, as we needed shopping and residentials all around to keep the nature reserve going as I wanted it to. Unfortunately, meanwhile, I've been distracted up here. A lightning strike hit one of my power lines and completely cut the power to my essential metro hub in the part of origin. A quick fix, and we were back up to the reserve. Before placing the actual reserve, I decided to go for some hotels, as that would help bring people to the area. I put a couple of mountain lodges around, as that would attract a decent amount of people. But for the aesthetics, I decided to go with some smaller huts throughout the area as well. Only 5 people can stay here compared to the 50 of the mountain lodges. But with all the nature around, and that being the main attraction for the huts, I think people are bound to come here either way. Now it was finally time to actually place some of the reserve stuff, and I selected a couple of spots throughout the areas, as I wanted it to be a hiking area, so I didn't want to put it too close to begin with. I put out some camps and some small tents, also usually with a fireplace. There isn't much to attract the people with, and the hotels didn't seem to boost the interest in the reserve. Ultimately, I have to wait until I can upgrade the reserve to a higher level to get more features. I decided to just wait it out. We're at 92,000 citizens at this point, so I wasn't really too nervous about hitting that 1k anymore. For year 43, the reserve finally upgraded, and we could begin to expand it a bit more to attract even more people. We didn't get a lot of stuff though, some viewing decks that would fit pretty good in some places, and a pre-made campsite that I essentially made myself with the tents and the fires before, but I guess it would be okay in some places. The first thing I did after that was to place some viewing decks throughout the whole reserve. I tried to place them in spots where people could get a good view over the terrain. I'm not a big fan of the campsite, I have to be honest, but it is a new item, so I decided to put it in either way. As people weren't really traveling to this reserve, I looked around in the unique building section to see if there were anything that would fit in the area. and I found this bird and bee haven that would actually be pretty cool. At least I thought it could fit here, so I decided to put it in to create some incentive for more tourists to come to the area. As all I could do now was really to wait for the next upgrade to the reserve, I decided to go back to Cross River to get the rest zoned in, as some more demand have been generated. I zoned in the rest of the residential and commercial, but meanwhile I was thinking to myself that this whole part of town couldn't just be like that. It was too boring to look at, and to be honest, I wasn't really all that impressed by it, as I were with other parts like Silverfoot Mountain. I tried to add some office buildings, though it didn't really do the trick. The area was simply too boring. Maybe I had run out of ideas at this point. While going through my brainstorming of what I could do with Cross River, before I knew it we got a pop-up. Level 3 Reserve, so I headed straight back to Mountain River. This time around we got some things that I really anticipated. We got the lookout towers. I don't think a nature reserve is anything without at least one lookout tower. I don't know where my fascination comes from with these. I ended off the year expanding the farm in Cross River, making it more and more of a wheat farm. Mostly because I chose only to put wheat there, and I decided to give it a fitting name for it as well. Lastly, I painted a park at Cross River to hopefully bring some more life to this rather dull district. Sure, the park needed some amenities, but that kinda had to be for next year because we were now out of time in year 43. In year 44, the Mountain River Reserve finally upgraded to level 4, unlocking fishing and hunting huts that I spread throughout the reserve. One more level to go and we could call this sort of finished, though it's not really making the profit that I was hoping for. The aesthetics of the place was just right until now, and I didn't want to break that. We are getting closer and closer to the 1K population, thereby creating the biggest city I have ever built in Cities Skylines. Many people have probably made a city bigger than this, but I think my biggest city is at 78,000 citizens, so 100k would be really cool to end off this game with. While waiting for the big moment, I went through the city, tweaking minor things, looking at the traffic flow in some key areas, and really just looking at the city in general. And just like that, we hit the target: over 100,000 citizens in the city. As the first city I have ever created of this size, and honestly, it has taken a lot of time. This is year 44, in-game year 44. It's still 6 years earlier than what I had hoped for, though I do have to say this could probably have done much quicker than what I have done, and I think it's important to keep in mind that this is not a speedrun by any means. This is just me trying to create my last city in Cities Skylines in the span of 50 years. Because I think it's kind of the right amount of time to spend sending this game off, as Cities Skylines 2 is really just around the corner. We ended off this year with over 100,000 citizens. For year 45, I had to come up with an idea for what to do with the 100k special that I wanted to create. And just like that, with a few clicks on the Steam store, I was now the proud owner of a new DLC pack. That is 2 DLCs just for this video. Does that deserve a like? No? Okay, I'll ask again later then. Say hello to 1K Cross River Campus. Well, it has not been built yet, but it will be soon enough. Celebrating the 100k milestone for the city, and a goal well reached 6 years earlier than I actually hoped for. We began the preparation of a campus in the city. With the basics set up like electricity, water, a starting road layout, metro line, bus lines, and of course the administration building for the campus itself, we could begin the actual university. Setting up the campus was easy, as we only had 4 buildings and some large sports arenas that I couldn't really afford at this point economically. I think it's very apparent throughout the next couple of years that I jumped into this DLC just like the other one, not knowing what the hell I was doing. So don't scream at me in the comments for making a lot of mistakes in the coming years, and hopefully I can turn that around before the city eventually ends. We weren't getting all too many students at the campus, and to tell you the truth, I don't really know why. Maybe there's just not enough people in Cross River with an education level to go to university. But I would like to think that students could come here from all over. We have the metro lines going directly to the campus, we have bus lines going to the campus as well, but people were not really showing up. I tried closing unis in towns like Cross River and so on to see if that would draw more people to 1K campus, but it really didn't. Maybe the campus was just a replacement for the already existing universities. I honestly thought it would be more like college, where people would come from all over, just traveling, kind of being there. End of the academic year came around and we have gotten one academic work, yet our reputation stayed the same, sadly. Feeling a little defeated, we went into year 46, and the time arrived for scouting a potential area to expand the 1K education franchise, as one uni apparently wasn't enough because it could not upgrade. To upgrade, we would need the academic year awards thingies, and we would also need enough students, but as we could not get enough students in Cross River, I decided to scout out for a location to put the next franchise of the uni. And one area did eventually present itself. The location, right between Origin Downtown and High District Utopia, a high population area that hopefully we could benefit from. As I went for just the regular uni in Cross River, I decided to try and go for the trade school here, as there were a lot of high value buildings, a lot of businesses, and a lot of office buildings going all the way down the coast to Silverfoot Mountain. I tried making this one more accessible for people as well by pulling the campus area with pathways going out to all of the cities, so people could essentially walk there if they wanted to. And it actually seemed to work. We got up to 362 students. That's 100 more than we got in Cross River. Still, it was locked at that number, and I didn't know why. It seems like my campus journey would just continue to be a failure. After some research and fiddling in-game, I came to the conclusion that I placed the Cross River campus too far away from the city. That actually seems quite of the bummer, but that one is then on me. Another academic year was over, and no changes to the reputation either. Back in Cross River, drastic times called for drastic measures, so if people didn't want to come to the uni, I would just have to bring the university to the people. And it actually worked. I did the same as I did with the trade school. I pulled out the area with pathways going all the way over the town, hoping that that would bring people to come closer into the uni and actually attend the uni. I ended up putting some study halls as well, and just like that, we were at 500 students at the Cross River campus. That would be enough to upgrade if we eventually got the academic works that we needed. Year 47, we were again under 500 students for each campus, but honestly at this point I can't bother babysitting them all the time. A death problem sparked the town once more, and it might be a general issue in the game at the later stages, I don't know. My capacity in the crematoriums were fairly good. People were just not being picked up. And I think there are mainly two reasons for that. I think there is a traffic problem in the city. I know that. We're only at 67% traffic, but also a problem with the hearses that I think I mentioned before is that they go from one district to another and they don't stay within a certain range. So it's like you can put it down in Silverfoot Mountain, but then it goes all the way to Origin Downtown, for example. And I think that creates a problem with showing the green areas of where it actually functions. But that is not the case because the hearses travel all over. This year I decided to spend some more time trying to fix the traffic because I still had the goal of reaching 70%. And it just really seemed like it was going worse and worse, but I still had my hopes up. I'm not giving up just yet. I encountered a bigger problem at the wheat farm in Cross River. For some reason I made the area with mainly one-way roads and it created this big traffic jam because people could only go one way down that one road. So I decided to revert it all and just change up the road to general roads. And honestly, after that, it was still not good, but at least better. I gave it a shot reverting another one-way road going out of Cross River City. One that I actually remembered changing to a one-way road in the first place because it seemed like that created a traffic problem, not having it as a one-way road. But I decided to revert that back, and it actually seemed to fix up the traffic just a little bit more in that area. I think it's no secret that I'm not that good at using TMPE. I'm trying my best, but it's such an advanced tool that I think I should probably have given it some more practice before eventually trying it in the city. But again, that is the thing with the city. I want to try a lot of stuff, see what it works and see what doesn't. Though my quest for right now is still to reach that 70% traffic flow. In year 48, I took a break from the traffic as I had a few areas in the city that were not quite finished yet. Back in Silver Bay, the first tourism area that I built, I still needed to finish half the island. I still wanted some more hotels, some more commercial buildings, and if possible, another unique building as well. As for the unique building, I went for the Climate Research Center as I thought it fit the island pretty well given its location. I realized that I keep calling it an island and I'm starting to think that I should actually follow through with that and make it an island. So that is exactly what I did. Another academic year ended, and even with 500 students in both campuses, nothing really happened. Though I remember that from the first year I granted both unis a research grant, and that actually generated an academic work. Maybe that is what I'm doing wrong. I should really have looked this up before I started playing with this in the city, but at this point we're so close to year 50, there's not really anything I can do about it. One city district that I haven't done much with in a while is Origin. Since we moved on to Origin downtown and then later on High District, this area have been neglected just a little bit. I made few changes and tweaks here and there, so it might look a little bit different. But I decided to give this area another park, Origin Central Park, just to give it a little more life. I did actually end up spending the rest of the year putting finishing touches to Origin, as some areas were still not zoned with residential or commercial. Lastly, I gave it a go by deleting some of the universities in this city that I have placed many years ago, in the hopes that students would actually transfer from the closed universities to the campus buildings that I made throughout the city. And to my surprise, it actually worked. As another academic year ended before the year did, we upgraded, and we can now build 4 more buildings in both universities. Being in year 49 already, I was getting more and more motivated to try and hit the 70% traffic. Therefore, I decided to make some changes in Silverfoot Mountain, cutting down on some of the conjunctions in the entrance to the district itself. One of the changes I made was the entrance going from Utopia into Silverfoot Mountain. Instead of going through the roundabout, they had to go under the roundabout, really in the hopes of not creating that traffic jam in the roundabout that tended to happen in the area. With that, I also changed the entrance itself to being a one-way road into the city and a one-way road going out of the city, in the hopes that people would shift their focus to other parts of the area going in and out, and that it would streamline the traffic a bit more. But it actually ended up making it completely worse, and now it's backing up the entire highway. On a positive note though, the trade campus got another upgrade this academic year, and now it's a renowned university. That means we unlock more buildings like the IT club, trade school library, and the School of Tourism and Travel. And maybe some more, but they were not as important. I put those buildings in the hopes of attracting even more students. The city's businesses were starting to struggle at this point. Because of major traffic jams in key areas, products were not being distributed around quickly enough. And if you remember from a couple of years ago, I changed some of the policies. I got the big business enthusiastic policy. Essentially what it does, it boosts the profit for commercial buildings, but it also boosts how quickly they sell all their products. So all of this combined made it so that nobody got products anymore and profits were dropping. I pretty much spent all my time this year on the traffic, so I'm not going to show all of it. And before I even knew it, we were in year 50. That means we only have 12 months to turn this all around. And what that essentially means is that I have a buttload of work in front of me. Not only did we have to stay above 100,000 people, a number that was dropping by the way because of the traffic, I also only had 12 months to reach 70% traffic. I had to see what I could do, because as the rule states, once I reached the end of this year cycle in August of 2073, I had to stop. No more building and fiddling with the city would stay just like it is. As a last effort, I tried creating a very ugly highway exit going from the cargo harbor to the roundabout near the main highway by High District. As the problem of not getting goods enough spread throughout the city fast enough, I thought a direct highway exit from the cargo harbor, where a lot of the stuff actually comes in, would probably benefit us pretty well, traffic-wise. As I powered through the city, having only a couple of months left of the challenge, I checked the traffic flow. 72%. Yes, now the challenge of keeping it there for about 8 months of in-game time. But as quickly as I celebrated, as quickly that joy was smashed to the ground, I kept going as I could see it dropping down to 71%. There are still some areas where the traffic is really bad. An example would be around the trade campus, as well as the central of Silverfoot Mountain. The main problem in Silverfoot Mountain is still that there is only one way into the city and one way out. If I had more time, I would probably make an alternate route going to that district, but being in the final year, I just don't think that would be possible. With only 4 months left, the inevitable happened. Traffic was down again to 64%, and now I really struggle for time. Therefore, once again, drastic times called for drastic measures. By sacrificing some houses in the city or the district of Silverfoot Mountain, I was able to put roundabouts that would hopefully get the traffic flow in Silverfoot to go up. Though I didn't like it very much, I ended up changing how Silverfoot Mountain looked. And to be honest, I actually liked it better before, but I mean, if this was more efficient, I guess it would be okay. There's only a month left, and sadly, it's not looking a whole lot better. I guess at this point I have to admit my failure, but at least I can say that I didn't go down without a fight. And 67% is still pretty damn good, I would say. Probably better than what I have done in the past. I spent the rest of the year going through the city from the very first districts I built to the very last. This is by far the biggest and most detailed city I have ever built in Cities Skylines, and though I'm kinda sad that it didn't turn out exactly how I wanted, I'm still proud of what I created. Also, I did reach 2 out of the 3 goals that I set for myself. I passed 100,000 residents. I did create multiple districts, but as I also predicted in the beginning of the video, I did not achieve 70% traffic, and that's mainly due to my own mistakes. There are some things that I would have liked to finish, or at least just make better. Millennium Park is rather unfinished, and if I had more time, I would probably have decorated it a bit more with stuff from all the other packs just to make it a bit more popping. It's really lackluster, at least for a milestone park, which I essentially created it for. The central of Silverfoot Mountain changed in look, and as I said before, I really don't like the change that much. It made it a little bit more efficient, but it just feels unfinished all of a sudden. Another thing is the campus pack. I jumped way too early into this DLC, so I actually had no idea what I was doing while building all the campus. It's a bit sad though, because I think it could actually have been a very good part of the city if I just created it in the right way or made it more central to the locations like I did with Trade Campus. Eventually Trade Campus actually got up and running a little bit better than 1K Campus over in Cross River did. The things that I am most proud of in this city would have to be next to Logical Gardens. The idea just worked perfectly. Building that giant zoo throughout all of the districts, it really accomplished that feeling of filling all the empty spaces between the buildings that Cities Skylines is pretty known for creating. The nature reserve is another part that I really like. Though it does feel a bit empty, it's still this huge area up in the mountains that you have these long roads to walk to, and there are little lodges between the roads. There are small campsites, lookout towers, lookout platforms, and so on. It really just achieved that feeling of being a nature reserve with some lodges and small huts spaced out throughout the mountains, and I feel like it really achieved the peak of the Hotels and Retreats DLC combined with the Park Life DLC. That being said, there is so much more I could have done with this city, and it's still not completely finished. But in the end, I had to stop somewhere, and we reached the 50-year mark, ending the challenge. If I had more time, I could probably have gone to 60, 70, 80, maybe even 100 years, and have built a even bigger city than what I did right now. Though I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do leave a like, as I spent a lot of time creating this video, not only just recording it, but also on the editing. This is by far the biggest project I have ever done on my channel, but I wanted to do something big, sending Cities Skylines into retirement and preparing for Cities Skylines 2. If that is something of interest to you, please do also hit that subscribe button, as I have a lot planned for Cities Skylines 2 that you do not want to miss out on. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.